In this episode, I'll be recapping and discussing episode 9 of season 1, Loyal to the End. The episode begins with the Thomas folk and Unique pretty much now being in open war. Unique hit hard at Lulu, and Marvin is now out for revenge. He pulls up on Unique, who seems like maybe he was at the movies or something like that with his son, and as they're getting ready to get into the car, he opens fire on the vehicle. It turns out that the rumor about his BMW being bulletproof is true, as it's seemingly the only saving grace, as had it not been bulletproof, there's a good chance that both Unique and his son would have been shot. Marvin doesn't really hit much of anyone. I think he hits one person. I get the sentiment, I get the intention, but Marvin being Marvin, it's typical, not carrying out the job as it's supposed to be done. Back at the hospital, the rest of the family is gathered, or at least RAQ is at the hospital at Lou's bedside with his girlfriend, at which point RAQ tells her that she can go home, get some rest, get some stuff done, take care of herself, and she'll stay there while they wait for him to wake up. Shortly after the girlfriend leaves, Symphony walks in. He's concerned because he hadn't heard from RAQ in a few days. This despite reaching out to her and whatnot, but she seemingly hasn't been returning his phone calls. He finally got in touch with Kanan. Kanan explained what happened and that she's at the hospital and whatnot. So out of concern, as I think most people would do, he shows up at the hospital to check on her, to see how she's doing, she's basically his girlfriend. I would think if you're in a relationship with someone and something like this happens to one of their family members, you would go, you would comfort them, check on them, see how they're doing, if there's anything they might need to have done or what have you, or even just to be there with them to provide some support. It becomes clear that she's upset. And it's like the moment Symphony walks in, she immediately begins giving him attitude. She kind of pushes past him and walks back out into the hallway, at which point he follows her. He's taken aback because she doesn't say a word to him. It's just as soon as he walks in, she steps back outside to talk to him, right? I guess away from Lulu. And she kind of just lights into him, right? She's upset now that him and Kanan are talking. She wanted this, I guess, but not to this degree where they're now, chit-chatting and stuff like that. About her, about things in the family and whatnot. She says some very unkind and uncalled for things to him, right? She looks at it as that she took her eyes off of the situation. She got too wrapped up in their relationship, the thing that they had going on. And this fantasy, this dream of them being together, having more kids with him, this potential life that they could have together, even just their relationship that they had together, that it was all a dream, right? It's not a reality for her. Fine, but the way that she conveys it to him is actually very unkind. And Symphony doesn't deserve that because he's so nice to her, and not just her, but to her son as well. But I understand that it's a matter of being in the midst of this drama, she's scared, she's angry about what happened to her brother, she's upset. And I think in that emotional state, she kind of pushes him away. It's like a defense mechanism for both her and him as well, because they're going into war. She kind of needs to be focused on the task at hand. And for him, because, Unique and them, they're not playing. They're coming hard. And I think him being around her or him being with her, it doesn't seem like anyone outside of the family really knows that, she's with him. But him being around might bring him to the attention of people that might seek to do him harm as a way of hurting her. They might try to do something to him. So I think that plays a role in her pushing him away, so that she could concentrate, but also as a way of keeping him safe, but again, this thing of her plans without discussing them with other people, right? Instead she just lashes out at him, dismissing their relationship, because at this point it is a relationship. For all intents and purposes, you don't see her dating anyone else. You don't get the sense that he's seeing anyone else. So pretty much this is an exclusive relationship, one that he takes seriously. He cares about her. He expresses that, she, questions him coming to check on her or calling Kanan and being concerned, why are you concerned? And he's well, I've been trying to reach you for several days. I hadn't heard anything back and I was worried. This is what most people would do when they're concerned, which she brushes off, because he refers to it as what normal people does. And so she uses that, just really picking arguments, oh, so I'm not normal, but it's if days have gone by, and someone that you see pretty regularly, however often, maybe you don't see them every day, but, you check in, you speak to them at least once a day or however often, you've reached out, you haven't heard back from them. and this is someone you care about, I'm sure you're going to be concerned. You'll at least want to reach out to make sure that they're okay, even if they're dealing with something, just to make sure you know that they haven't had an accident, something bad hasn't happened to them. That's a very reasonable response. But given the situation, it's like she's just all over the place. And so she reacts negatively to it, kind of once again pushing Symphony away. And I was so angry with RAQ. Like, just shut up, sit down, and let this man sit with you by your brother's bedside. Like, let him be nice to you, support you. It's like it goes back to the conversation that she had in episode 3 with Jukebox about the two of them, that they deserve to be happy. Why shouldn't you be? Why don't you deserve to be in love and to have someone care about you? It's like, but then it's like, every opportunity you get, you push this guy away. All he wants to do is love you, care about your son, spend time with you. Then the least little anything happens, you push him away. You probably need some therapy, RAQ. It would benefit you, because it seems like basically she's like looking for an argument. She intentionally takes his words the wrong way and just picks an argument with him. It's her way of putting distance between them. In efforts to push him away, she like hits below the belt, downplaying their relationship. And it's just unnecessarily unkind. And at this point, he's pretty much tired of it. He replies, kind of giving her back the same energy, but still respectfully to a degree. He doesn't go as far as she does, but rather just walks away from the situation, which I think is understandable. I think anyone would get tired of dealing with someone who you're trying to be in a relationship with them, and there's all of this back and forth where they're constantly pushing you away. It's like, if you want to be alone, go ahead and be alone. That's your problem. In parting, even with all of that drama, he's still nice enough to turn around and give her a heads up to pass along to Marvin that he should be careful with Tony, that she can't be trusted. As we saw in the last episode, after RAQ told Marvin to go away, he went around gathering up money that was owed to him to kind of close out his business with RAQ. And in going to see Tony, it turns out she had a recording device in her office and was trying to set him up. Fortunately, he didn't fall for it, but, Symphony happened to pick up on the exchange between them. He's working at the club. He's probably still seeing Marvin coming in and out and sees what's going on with Tony. So even though she's being mean to him, he's still looking out for her and her family. Howard happens to show up outside the hospital right as the Bronco pulls up, and the arguments seem a little bit out of place. It's like guys with the highest of high tops meeting one of the employees who comes out from the hospital and hands them a bag. Paying attention, they just look a little out of place. And as the audience, we see them go away and come back a little bit later dressed in white scrubs, while the lady has also handed them some ID badges. Basically, what it breaks down to is that some guys from Unique's crew are here at the hospital to finish the job on Lulu. They plan to walk into the hospital room dressed as hospital employees to kill him in his bed. Howard is able to get to them in time, right, to prevent them from killing Lulu, and they're arrested, right? RAQ is still there and whatnot, but they managed to get stuff worked out. I guess Howard finally did some work, and I appreciate that he prevented Lulu from getting killed. But he then, being the jerk that he is, turns around and presses RAQ again on her arranging a meeting between him and Kanan. So this is just going to be a never-ending thing. And within that conversation, just as quickly, he turns around and is back to threatening RAQ. Before, he was threatening her that if she didn't arrange for him to meet Kanan, that he was going to tell everyone that Kanan was his son, which would kind of put a target on both of them. It would brand her as being a snitch because in the past she was messing with a cop. Never mind that she was like a teen at the time. No one's going to take time to figure all that out. And now, again, in an attempt to get his way, he's threatening her that if she doesn't arrange a meeting with Kanan, that he's going to have him arrested, move forward with the charges stemming from the whole blue cap mess, right? And with that they'll send him off to Spofford. If you're unfamiliar, Spofford was a juvenile detention center up in, I think it was the Bronx. And like Mike Tyson and other kids like that, problematic youth, spent their time there. It was a notorious detention center. juvenile detention center. And so here it is that he's now going on about wanting to build a relationship with Kanan, but the way that he's planning to start off this relationship is by threatening RAQ, by blackmailing her into like allowing him to interact with Kanan. It just shows you how selfish he is. That's probably plays a role in why he intervened with unique guys trying to kill Lulu, because in protecting Lulu, it's like foiling an assassination attempt where, you know, he was probably thinking, okay, now he can trade on this, you know, use it to kind of get RAQ to do what he wants. You know, like he doesn't really do anything out of the niceness of his heart. In the middle of all this, RAQ and Kanan finally have a chance to speak. It's the first opportunity since their last exchange where she slapped him. You know, he's comes to the hospital to visit Lulu and she's there in the room. They kind of clear the air between themselves, where he explains that he understands why she had to kill D-Wiz, you know, and there's no need for her to explain or to apologize. And so with that, they kind of put that stuff to bed. He's now on the same page and is here because he wants to help. He wants to get involved, but he's now willing to take direction from her. He wants her to tell him what to do. Burke goes out and follows up with Jukebox, right? Going back some episodes ago when Howard didn't show up to work, she went out into the field on her own and focused on trying to connect with Jukebox. And so since then, she's been making an effort to continue touching base with Jukebox, trying to build a rapport. Turns out that they have some things in common. You know, she doesn't say it explicitly, but it sounds like she's a lesbian as well. And upon Nicole, you know, she's actually the one that arranged for Jukebox to be released from, for the cops in Manhattan to let her go after she got picked up at Nicole's house. And she just kind of speaks to her about, like, you know, her relationship with Nicole and kind of offering her some comfort, some words of encouragement, sympathizing with her, empathizing with her, that she's been in similar situations and realizes how traumatic it must have been to have lost Nicole in such a tragic manner. You know, she explains that she experienced her brother committing suicide and the pressure that she felt to then become a police officer, as that was the path that he was expected to take. She draws on commonalities between herself and Jukebox as a way of bonding, a way of trying to connect with her. But at the same time, she then begins asking questions about Buck 20 and D-Wiz and whatnot. You know, she knows that Jukebox is a Thomas. You know, they have many of the same connections, you know, her and Kanan. So she might likely have information as well. The episode kind of jumps back and forth between what's going on at the hospital and what's going on in the neighborhood. So surprisingly, at least to me, we find, you know, Marvin goes to walk into the chapel, which most hospitals have some kind of chapel or something like that. And as he enters the chapel, who does he find there but RAQ? RAQ is sitting there quietly, and when he walks in, he kind of makes like a snide remark about her, like, oh, you know, you're here to pray for forgiveness for the things you've done. And she specifies that no, she's there to pray, but for forgiveness for the things that she's about to do. I find it interesting that these two, who I wouldn't really think are particularly religious, you get some hints that there might be something there. And here it is that in this time of stress, RAQ goes to church, not church, but the chapel. She admits that she's not there for the specific reason Marvin says, but she is in the chapel, yet still to pray and to ask for forgiveness for what she's about to do. If you go back to the previous episode, when she came into the house and yelled up to Kanan, she called out his full name, which is Kanan Elijah Stark. The last name comes from DEFCON, but the first and middle name, those are like biblical names. So I find it raised an eyebrow at her giving her son those names. It made me pause, right? And it's like, here she is now sitting in the chapel praying, but it's telling that Marvin also went to the chapel. It gives you pause, right? With them and religion, or church, I should say, right? As they begin to talk, you know, Marvin expressing some of his frustrations that he admits he doesn't have the same capabilities as RAQ. RAQ is in the organization's driver's seat, and he admits that she is the best person to lead the organization, or at least she's better than him at leading the organization because she's strategic. She can look at and assess situations in ways that he cannot. So he doesn't begrudge her being in this position, but rather it feels emasculating to him for his younger sister, for him to be taking orders from her. It's like he mentioned that it's been stated before that this was originally his crew. This was originally his thing. He was the one that started out selling drugs, but she took over. And he specifies that it makes him feel small to take orders from her. He needs to feel heard. He needs to feel like a man. He needs to feel respected and appreciated. And he feels like he's not getting that from RAQ. RAQ explains that she brushes aside his comments about her being a better leader by stating again, which you kind of pick up on, this isn't really the position or the life that RAQ necessarily wants. You hear it now, and there are multiple instances where it's indicated that this is not really the life that she wanted, right? If she could, she would likely leave it behind, but she's in it, her family's in it, and now this is where she is for right now. She explains to him, she specifies that she did not intend to take over his position. He was the leader, but when he stepped off, meaning when he went to jail, they needed someone to fill in, and she stepped up and took the job. She didn't seek it out. It's just through the situation of what was going on at that time, she stepped up to take the mantle. You know, leading the crew is not like some great achievement to her. It's kind of just something that she does because someone had to do it. And at that time, it sounds like she was either the only or the best candidate. But given other options, she probably would not have chosen this role for herself. With that, you begin to get some further glimpses into what their childhoods, or at least their early young adult lives, might have been like. As in one of the earlier episodes, Marvin specified, well, he was telling Kanan that he began selling drugs at the age of 10. He started this crew, he went to jail, and here you hear it mentioned that he basically raised RAQ and Lulu. Obviously, he's the older brother. It's a bit unclear how much older, but you get the sense that Lulu is probably quite a bit younger than the two of them. I would, if I had to guess, I would assume that RAQ is probably closer to Marvin's age than she is to Lulu's. But either way, it's specified that he raised the two of them. You know, he loves them. He would do whatever for them. He's willing to die for them if need be. And RAQ specifies that she feels the same way. As she knows that Marvin made sacrifices for them, that Marvin took care of them. Specifically, it's stated that he took care of them while their parents were on nonsense. It sounds like maybe the parents were using drugs or were into their own thing, but whatever it was, they weren't taking care of these kids. And so Marvin stepped up to the plate. And it sounds like he started dealing drugs and whatever else he was doing to take care of himself and to support them as well. And when he went to jail, RAQ then stepped up. However it was that Lulu then became involved in the business, that's unclear. But it's one of these things where there was a vision between them, but now facing this real threat from outside that's coming for them and coming for them hard, none of them can really take on Unique by themselves. Like they need each other. They have to rely on each other if this thing is going to work, if they're going to survive. It's like this is an opportunity for Marvin and RAQ to sit down and clear the air, to talk out the problems between themselves, to try to get to a place where they can coexist. If possible, cooperate with each other, get along, because things are going to be real hectic for the foreseeable future. They'll need each other. Realistically, had Unique just probably waited for a bit, Lulu and RAQ probably would have had a falling out. As Lulu became more involved with music, they probably would have, split with different people going their own ways, right? RAQ had already split from Marvin, and there was distance between her and Kanan. It's like, had he just waited instead of forcing the issue, the Thomas crew would have probably fallen apart on its own. But him taking a shot at Lulu, and most importantly, missing, kind of reminded everyone that they're one team, they're a family, and they need to unite against any outside forces. Him taking that shot at Lulu, that's actually the catalyst for bringing Marvin and RAQ back together and for bringing Kanan and RAQ back together. Unique mentioned during the meeting that he had with Lulu, when he approached him about potentially abandoning RAQ and coming over to him, he was under the impression that he had damaged RAQ and her crew to the point where within a few months she would fall, that her supply had dried up, her corners were gone. He was under the impression that he'd destroyed her completely. It was just a matter of time for her to fall. And honestly, putting aside maybe Juliana's cousin, that could have been the reality. That if things continue the way that they were going, that RAQ would be done. But in taking that shot at Lulu, it kind of lit a fire under her, lit a fire under Marvin as well, individually, but then also provided motivation for the two of them to sit down and talk, clear the air between themselves. It's like there was tension and problems between them before, but in him forcing the issue, in him, rather than allowing things to just develop and continue along on its own, with its own momentum, he applied a little bit too much pressure. And instead of it being the final blow to knock them over, it actually gave them like a second wind. And now when they start hitting back, it's like a united force coming at you. And that's incredibly dangerous. So it's like back to this thing of now, you know, that RAQ mentioned early on in the season about, you know, being the hunter versus the hunted. So it's like Unique struck back at them, right? He's been kind of bullying her throughout the season, and she's been hitting back every now and then. But it's like essentially they were kind of in the position of being a cornered animal. And he came in a little bit hot and heavy, but didn't finish them off. And so it's like now you have this wounded animal that's desperate to do every and anything to survive. And so with that, it's like without knowing it, Unique has now gone from being the hunter to being the hunted. Because it's like now both RAQ and Marvin are gunning for him, as well as you now have Kanan, Jukebox. It's like everyone except for Lulu, you know, because he's out of commission. It's like you now have everyone's attention, and that's not a good place to be. That's not a situation that you want. RAQ sending Kanan to go tool up with Marvin. Unfortunately, this leads Marvin, in the midst of all of this, finding pictures and videos and whatnot of Jukebox and Nicole, which finally he opens his eyes to the reality that Jukebox is a lesbian, which he somehow missed. I think in part because he's been somewhat negligent with regards to Jukebox. He destroys her room in a fit of anger, which is like, he's a parent, he's an adult. He should act like one. You know, what do you get from destroying her room? She comes in and you just know this is going to be drama, right? He just starts in right away making disparaging comments about her, about Nicole. But again, they have this way of just dropping in little comedic moments. So he's starting in on Jukebox. He uses like a pretty derogatory term, but then he turns around and he means to ask if she's a lesbian, but Marvin being Marvin instead asks her if she's Lebanese. And it was like in the midst of all this tension, this serious situation, that little line is dropped in there and it just caught me off guard. I was watching and it's like this really tense scene and I just couldn't help but laugh. And it's like not minutes later, World War III breaks out between the two of them. You know, he's making disrespectful and disparaging comments about Nicole. She returns in kind. She spits on Marvin. And now I will say, Marvin was dead wrong for the things he said about Nicole. It was incredibly insensitive and very unnecessary. But where I come from and the people I grew up around, spitting on somebody is considered the height of disrespect. Like, it's just not done. It's regarded as being incredibly disrespectful. You don't do that to another human being unless, like, you're ready to go there. I understand he was being incredibly insensitive with the things that he was saying, but her spitting on him, I'm not saying it was right. And, you know, one was right, the other was wrong. I'm saying that the two of them were just instigating this conflict. Him by stating that it was good for Nicole that she died and that she was an abomination. Her mom being from a family of heathens and just all of these religious references that you now find just being dropped here and there by him and RAQ. So, you know, Jukebox spitting on Marvin, not saying he was right, but I'm saying I understand. I'm not saying that she was right to spit on him, but I understand her anger at the things that he was saying about Nicole. You know, this tit for tat between the two of them trying to hurt each other leads to a physical confrontation. Throughout the show, we've seen Kanan and Marvin versus RAQ and Jukebox, like how they interact with each other. And Kanan and RAQ, when they interacted in the previous episode, RAQ ended up slapping Kanan. Here you have it. Now you see Marvin interacting with Jukebox. The two of them end up in this physical altercation. Marvin loses control and comes seemingly very close to probably killing Jukebox. It's just this tension within the family. For the most part, they're okay with the kids that aren't theirs, right? Like their nieces and nephews. RAQ with her niece, Marvin with his nephew. But when they interact with their own kids, it's gotten to a point where it's like the problems are just so out of control that they lose control and it becomes a physical altercation. Like, in neither case is there really this parent and child relationship. If you look at it, Kanan used to call RAQ Ma, and Scrappy kind of like upped him on it, right? Where he was referring to her as RAQ. And we hear now when he's speaking to Marvin, he refers to her as RAQ. Yeah, and when this fight erupts between Jukebox and Marvin, it's like we've been building towards this moment throughout the season. It's still incredibly shocking when it happens. Because you've had this ongoing tension between Jukebox and Marvin, this feeling that there are problems in this relationship. But to actually have it go there, for the two of them to become physical and really seeming for it to get to the point where it seemed like a real possibility that Marvin could kill Jukebox was extremely shocking. You've kind of been building towards that as well with RAQ and Kanan, but I felt like RAQ had better reasoning with Kanan. You know, I thought the acting in these scenes, don't get me wrong, the acting throughout the series was very good. You know, these are like some of the standout scenes where it's like the acting was just above and beyond. And this is definitely one of those scenes. The scene between not just the physical fight that they had, but the lead up to it, the back and forth, kind of like this releasing of the pressure valve of all of this tension and unease that's existed between them. The way that they like openly erupt, the way that they came together, the two of them played off of each other. It was amazing. They did an incredible job with the acting in this scene. We kind of have a scene that goes back to the first episode where RAQ takes Kanan to the beach and gave him a gun to teach him how to shoot. Back then, she wasn't really serious about it, right? It was still a way of appeasing him, but it kind of played into this thing of her going back and forth about whether or not to bring him in. You know, she was humoring him, but not really bringing him into the business. But here, she's kind of accepted. And I think as the season has progressed and he continues to insist, she's come to accept that this is what he wants. This is where they are. This is what they're going to do. And it's in her best interest to fully bring him in and prepare him. So you see, it starts out with her kind of giving him a refresher on handling the gun. You see him firing off shots at some bottles, sort of as like target practice. At which point she then shoots. She doesn't miss any of her targets. She knocks off all the bottles. One shot, everything's down. She then explains to him about guns, you know, before walking over to a table where she begins loading up a gun for him, explaining to him that she needs him to do something. She's sending him out to go and kill someone, a specific person. But with this, it's not going to be like a drive-by. He's going to have to walk up to this person, look them in the eye, and kill them. She specifies that she's his mother. You know, she understands how insane it is what she's asking him to do, but it's necessary because this person is a substantial threat to her, to him, to all of them, the entire family. And unfortunately, he's the only one that can carry out this job. From there, she starts like giving him a bit of a pep talk, explaining to him that he's her son. She's finally seeing that he's capable, that he's cut out for this. Whereas she reiterates that she really wished that he had just gone to that school, you know, that she wishes that he'd taken a different path, the path that she dreamed up for him. But failing that, she realizes that those things weren't realistic, that she raised him in the midst of all of this, and it was going to be difficult, actually nearly impossible for him to grow up in this environment, being her son in the midst of all this stuff, and for him to not become involved. You know, she expresses that it's like in his bloodline. At this point, it's so ingrained in her that she couldn't help but to pass it on to him. And so with that, at the very same time that, you know, she's given him this pep talk, the scene kind of begins to switch back and forth between her and him versus Unique and his people, because these are two sides gearing up for war. And RAQ doesn't have a lot of people with her, right? She's got her one soldier. It's just her and Kanan, right? Outside of like her two brothers, and Lulu is down. Marvin is active, but he's preoccupied at that moment with Jukebox. So essentially she's sending Kanan into battle, not necessarily with Unique, but we see the two juxtaposed against each other, where Unique has like a large crew, his regular everyday people that we're used to seeing, in addition to others, right? People that he's brought in from upstate. It's at least like 20 people, maybe not 50, but it's at least 20 people gathered. And he gets up on like a table or whatever it is to also give them a pep talk. So you have these two scenes shifting back and forth, where you could think of it as like generals preparing their armies to march into battle. The crazy thing is that Unique has like 20 people with him. RAQ has one, her son. And I think that tells you like the faith that she has in him, that she takes him by himself, just the one, and puts the full weight of the organization on his shoulder. Essentially, she sends him out. And it's not really fair to him. It's manipulative. She manipulates him now. It's like, whereas before she was trying to manipulate him away from the business, now she's manipulating him to get him deeper into the business. It's like the tables have turned in the sense where now she's pushing him further into their business. And with that, she gives him this pep talk. She lays a guilt trip on him that essentially he's the only one that she can count on right now. It rests on his shoulder. He made this point about, wanting to help, that he wanted to be there for her. And before, she was kind of like pushing that away from him. Like, don't worry about it. I've got it. I take care of me. I take care of you. I don't need you taking care of me. That's not for you to worry about. But now she's kind of turning that around, where it's, I need you to save me. I need you to save us. And the way that it's developed over the course of the season, where it's like, not necessarily that they've switched places, because Kanan still is into and still wants to be into things, but just the transformation over the course of the season is incredible. Yeah, I was impressed with how things came to this end. I find it really telling that here it is, you see Unique with his army of 20 plus people, and they're grown men. And here you have RAQ on her side in this particular scene, and it's just her and Kanan, just her one soldier, and he's not even a grown man. It goes back to this thing that she's been constantly repeating, that nothing or anyone is ever going to come between them. And it's her and Kanan against the rest of the world. It's just the two of them. It's them against everyone else. And here you see that it plays out that way, where it's her and Kanan versus Unique versus whoever else might have a problem or an issue. It's her and her son. She's pushed everything else away. Sure, she likes Symphony, but, she held fast to what she said. She holds on to Kanan, but she pushed Symphony out of the way. When it's time to now tool up and get to business, Marvin isn't there with her. It's her and her son. We see Burke take an interest in Jukebox, right? And that interest is being utilized now. With encouragement from RAQ, Jukebox is now passing along information to the police instead of shutting them out, right? RAQ has explained to her that sometimes having relationships with police officers can be beneficial to you. And so here we see kind of like a setup where she's now feeding, Jukebox that is now feeding information to Burke that's helpful to the Thomas organization. Essentially, she's helping RAQ put Unique into a bad place with the police, right? Into the police crosshairs, meeting with Burke and issuing a warning to her that Unique is planning to hit back at the police for them messing up his re-up. Meanwhile, while this is going down, I was surprised that suddenly there's like a scene in a church where a choir is singing. And when I first watched it, it threw me off a little bit because I was like, what is going on here? And so it turns out here again is this religious thing where, we're in church. Who knew that RAQ went to church, right? Like she's the one in church. And so here we see it that the choir is singing, the pastor gives a sermon, and afterwards, people are gathered for like cookies and juice, whatever. Probably because they've been in church for so long, their blood sugar is low. And so during the church service, RAQ was seated next to a lady. And now after the service, you see her standing with this woman and speaking to her. And it turns out that this is her mom. Up to this point, we've heard mention of Kanan's grandmother, right? So we could assume that her mom was still alive, that this was the grandmother that she was speaking about, right? That she was telling Kanan that if things went left, she would send him to live with his grandmother, right? But this woman's in Queens, right? We've never seen her up to this point. We've seen her, the two brothers, but we've never seen her mother. We haven't seen her father either. And we've never really heard her mention her mother. You know, we've heard some mention of the dad, right? Like a few times, but here it is that her mother is alive and well, living here in Queens, but yet you never see this woman and family is very important to them, right? They have this weekly dinner with the two brothers and they're there with their kids, but the mom is never there. It's like, what's that about? Up to this point, you've never really heard RAQ mention anything about her mother. But here it is that you meet this lady, and I was a little bit scared for RAQ because, like, the woman seemed a little bit intimidating, almost threatening. Like, she didn't directly say anything, but I kind of got the feeling that, you know, RAQ, I guess, was in an introspective mood and kind of broaches the subject that, you know, if the mom has ever thought about how it is that RAQ came to be the person that she is. And the mom kind of puts it back on her like, you know, hush your mouth. This is not the place. It's not the time. And pretty much don't want to hear it here, now, or at any point in the future. You know, that the person RAQ is due to RAQ making her own decisions. She's a grown woman. She's chosen her path in life. And it's like the mom absolves herself from any and all responsibility for what RAQ has turned into. You know, her tone put me on notice. It had me on guard because I kind of felt like even Lulu and Marvin, who know RAQ, like they don't speak to her like that. And here it is that you have her mom who just completely shuts her down and does so quite rudely, like just very dismissive of this conversation that RAQ is trying to start. You know, it made me pause because RAQ is a bad girl, but it sounds like the mom is also a problem. You know, like I hope to see more of her as the series goes on because the mom seems to be very interesting. I mean, she seems like she's probably mean, but I'm curious to see more about her, to learn more about her. But then also like their backstories is, I'd assume that the mom would play a key role in that. But the way she shot RAQ down, I was like, ooh, savage, you know? And I don't know, man. So RAQ is sending Kanan out to pretty much kill someone on her behalf. And he shows up to Baisley Park carrying a bag. There's a group of people leaving the park. And so he turns, right, to hide his face so that they don't see him. Upon entering the park, he stops and takes a moment to pull out the jacket. Turns out that it's Unique's custom-made jacket, the one that he had, and Lulu took from his car in one of the earlier episodes. And so now this jacket has been given to Kanan. And he goes further into the park for this meeting. He's surprised to find that the person he's meeting is Detective Howard. So basically, his mom has sent him to Baisley Park to kill Detective Howard. Howard is like trying to work up to explain to Kanan that he's his dad, to talk to him and whatnot. But before he gets too far, he recognizes the jacket, but it doesn't seem like it specifically clicks for him that it's Unique's jacket, just that it's not Kanan's. And at that moment, Kanan pulls out the gun that RAQ had given him, and after a brief moment of hesitation, fires into his chest once, and then a second time after he's fallen to the ground. Essentially, RAQ has sent Kanan to kill his father. And it's like a reversal of, if you've seen the original Power series, well, it's a repetition, right, actually, as there are two instances of something along these lines. First, you have it where Kanan kills his son. Tommy killed his father, right? But then RAQ also killed his father as well. And so it's actually like this kind of repetitious thing. It works here in comparison to the original Power, you know, though I still do not like the idea of Howard being Kanan's dad. But the storyline of Kanan stepping up to kill him, I guess, works within the broader context here. Thanks for tuning in. 9 down, 1 more to go. Be sure to check back later today for the final episode, just in time for Raising Kanan Season 2 premiere. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my Rolling with RAQ playlist. Go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and share it on social media. More importantly, drop a comment and let me know what you think. What did you think about RAQ sending Kanan to kill Howard?